Hi everybody, we're back again on this rather dark evening, but yeah, people who've tuned in before will see that we are going to do a slightly different style and approach this time. So this week we've been joined by Yanchee Lau, who I don't know where he is on your screen at the moment, but he's over in our Hong Kong office. He basically left London about 3 years ago to start up the Hong Kong office. And we're going to have a bit of a candid chat this time. It's not presentation, no slides. So you won't be death by PowerPoint. And he's going to kind of start talking about, kind of experiences of how to set up an office in a different country, sort of, the expectations versus reality, what's been hard, what are the challenges, and give him some sort of, give his top tips at the end as to how to set up an office or how to work abroad. I'm Catherine Smale. I work as Eckersley O'Callaghan's marketing and BD manager. And so I'll be sort of steering through and kind of hosting it and kind of guiding the questions a bit. So I think, welcome, Yanchee. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. By the way, it's pretty late for you at the moment. I think it's about 12:30 at the moment for you.
It's 12:30, yeah. And I'm just looking at the people who've joined us. Some of you should be in bed.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Anybody who's staying up late, that's great. If you do have any questions, then pop them in the question box. I think I've been told that actually the question box for you guys is on this side, not that side, which I keep pointing to. So pop your questions in. We'll take those as we go if they fit, and then kind of if they don't, then we'll put them at the end. And yeah, and you can rate the questions. So let us know with that, and basically just say hello if you want to on the little chat function. So yeah, so I suppose I'll dive straight in. Kind of why did you decide to make the move to Hong Kong?
I mean, it was sort of a bit of the stars aligning for me personally and for EOC. On a sort of personal level, I became quite interested in living abroad. I'd grown up in Manchester, moved to London, worked in London for like 15 years. But I had an itch to live abroad. Hong Kong sort of made sense to me because my parents were originally from Hong Kong, so yeah, it was also culturally as well. It was something that I'm familiar with. So at the time, ELC also happened to be doing a lot of work in Asia and specifically in Hong Kong. And I had a few conversations with Brian and James, and it was obvious that it was somewhere we could establish ourselves, as part of our commitment to our existing projects in Hong Kong and the region, and also to see whether we could do more here, because it's obviously a place that values our service. So after a few conversations, that was kind of it, really. I packed my bags, and towards the end of 2017, got on the plane, 6,000 miles, and yeah, that was that.
I mean, it's a bold move, isn't it? But it's sort of made a decision that feels right at that point in time, doesn't it? Which is great.
Yep.
I know I've had that feeling before, and it's a really nice thing to kind of embark on doing. And so, how's it been going then so far? You've been there for 3 years now?
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, we've been working in Asia, well, long before I arrived in 2017. But I think it's a place that it's a culture that kind of relies on the face-to-face, on like sort of person-to-person relationships and interactions, and building of trust. So we're based in Hong Kong as a sort of base for the region, but Hong Kong is home as well. So in Hong Kong, we have had some good successes with winning new work. I mean, at one point, we were working on 3 grade A offices in Hong Kong, which is a big deal. And we've expanded our client base. But also, it's also bear in mind that it's also about the wider region as well. We're doing work in Macau, Taiwan, China, and in the meantime, projects that we were working on already have completed, such as in Singapore and in Bangkok and Japan. So we've been doing stuff here for a long time, and it made sense to do this, and yeah, it's been going quite well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I've just been told that I'm kind of not very loud to the people out there. So if you can't hear me, then just pop up on the chat function and just kind of I mean, not that I'm the subject of this, so don't worry. But kind of if you can't hear me, then just let me know on the chat function. I can try and decently with my computer. But yeah, so I was kind of so it's intriguing. Sort of what do you think is so special about having an office now? Kind of what makes it why is this important? Why is this important now?
I think as a company, we've always taken a sort of global outlook on where we work. I think in the current situation, it's actually really paid off. Us establishing in Hong Kong sort of 3 years ago. I mean, it's obvious that having a work spread across the world, diversified, is a good strategy against sort of over reliance on a few markets. I think that it's quite obvious that Asia is going to come out of the current situation the earliest. So
yeah, but and I suppose it all ties into at the moment we've got loads of travel restrictions in place, and so
that's
actually,
right.
You were saying earlier about the fact that Hong Kong, a lot of it is done on sort of face-to-face meetings. So without that, I suppose we lose a bit of touch with our clients, and actually having you kind of on the ground, being able to move around and go and see them makes a big difference, I assume, in terms of sort of the way in which we do our work, which is really important. And so
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we used to do a lot of traveling, but now we could do less, and obviously now we can't at all. So it kind of helps. Yeah, totally agree.
So sort of why Hong Kong then? Sort of if we're looking at Asia, sort of is Hong Kong a good place to kind of set up an office? Kind of are you just working solely in Hong Kong, or are you kind of looking at all different areas around?
I mean, Hong Kong is one of the sort of default places in Asia where a lot of companies from other continents end up based. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think firstly there is it's English speaking. There's it's easy to set up a company. There's a very simple tax. There's a number of reasons. I think geographically it's in a great place. There's a great statistic that Invest Hong Kong have supplied to me, and it's that Hong Kong is within half of the world's let's get this right, is within a 5 hours flight of half the world's population.
That's
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It's within that 5 hours flight, it's going to be a mix of sort of developed and emerging markets. Some are more like some are more favourable to us, others hopefully will be in the future. So geographically, it really makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, sort of, why, what's Hong Kong been like then? Is it sort of what's it like to be there?
I mean, I remember coming here as a child, and the immediate things are like the density, the heat, the buzz. I think the first time you come, it's pretty special. You realise this is a pretty unique place. Hong Kong's been in the news recently. People kind of joke, "Oh, you came at the right time," but yeah, I think Hong Kong's a very resilient place. It's had a number of events through history, and it's always come out.
Yeah, it feels like it's got an incredible mix of cultures, an
Mm,
incredible sort of rich history, and an incredible mix
mm,
of cultures and things like that. Has
mm.
the cultural differences kind of have they been a challenge to you in any way? Have they sort of kind of what impact have they had on sort of the day-to-day running of
Mm,
business, or how you run
sure.
a business or build
Yeah.
business or that kind of things?
hmm hmm I think that doing business in Asia, there's a few things culturally you have to be sensitive to. Um, you, the projects can be very demanding, very quick. One of my one of my friends has a term called China Fit, and it's programs are very tight and often very demanding. So you have to be very agile. A lot of uh, honkies are
Honkies, did you say?
very have very strong work ethic, I would say. So um, so yeah, you
Is
have
that
to
what
be
they're
China
known
Fit.
of? Is that what they're known as? Honkies. Excellent. Love
Yeah.
it. Brilliant.
I think as well, we've touched on it before, that modes of communication are quite different as well. Obviously, we mentioned there's more of a reliance on the face to face. People don't really like emails. I don't know. I found that probably the best way, if you really need an answer from someone, you WhatsApp them basically, which somewhat, which is a little bit foreign to uh, some of the guys in London. Because WhatsApp is a personal thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels like a
but
real personal thing.
it does, but it's very much used for business over here. In China, it's WeChat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you speak the language at all? Is it kind
I
of
do. I do. I mean, it's improving. I mean, my Cantonese, I think, is about 8-year-old boy level.
excellent.
So
Yep.
I don't tend to use it for business. It's Hong Kong is very much a sort of international city with the sort of strong British legacy. So for business, English works as a default. So my Cantonese is improving, and it's a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. How long do you reckon it'll take you to learn the language?
I think I'm getting too old to
Never too old, Jen.
particularly
You're never
improve.
too old. We've
To get
established that you're
better.
only just a fraction older than me, so I don't want to think that I'm too old to do anything.
Okay.
What have you been sort of? What's your main challenges in
Mm,
terms of setting up?
mm. Um, I think for us, it's quite strange because we've worked all around the world and we've done some very high profile projects, um,
Mm.
but we've kind of our profile has isn't as strong as some of our peers. So often, even if we've completed projects in Hong Kong and across countries in Asia, people haven't tend to have not heard of us,
Mm.
which is obviously a problem. Um, so a lot of our work here has been to introduce ourselves and getting in front of people, just let them know who we are and we've done, and usually they're very impressed by our projects. Usually they say, "Oh, we've been looking for the engineers for the Apple stores, and we couldn't find them." So
Yeah, you were saying earlier that sort of a lot of them
yeah.
had pictures of the Apple stores up on the
Mm,
up on their lobby walls and things, and they go, I can tell you all about that. I kind of that's very good. I mean,
it is.
that is the importance of having somebody who can kind of who's on the ground, I suppose, isn't it? In terms of being
Mhm,
able to meet
mhm,
people face
mhm,
to face, and again building up that trust,
mhm,
just the face to
mhm.
face things like
Yeah,
that.
I
The
think with projects as well, it's I mean the way we work is that we we work very closely with our London office to
yeah,
deliver projects, and it sort of depends on the scale, where the client is, where the architect is. Sometimes the architect is an international architect, so they may design from their base in London or in Europe or in the US, and they might have a local um, office in Hong Kong. Um, depending on who is where, then we kind of are able to aid the communication that way. So yeah, I think that's one of another strength of having these offices around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of balance the work out depending on sort
Hmm.
of who is
Hmm.
where, and it means it's truly
Hmm.
global, which is great to be able to offer that service to the clients.
Yeah.
The have you had many surprises? Kind of what's been the most
Yeah.
surprising thing? Kind of
Mm.
expectation versus reality.
Hmm. I would say that I mean most of our work before the office, and certainly at the start of the office, was with private clients. We tend to do well with commercial buildings and feature structures and retail. Um, yeah, mainly private clients, but we've actually started doing some work with public clients as well. So that was a surprise, a pleasant one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've also started doing quite a bit of work in Taiwan as well. So that was kind of off the back of an introduction after we finished the Taipei store.
Yeah, the Taipei, not is that to Taiku place?
No, the Taipei store
Oh,
in
Taipei.
Taiwan.
Sorry. Yes, sorry,
Yep.
misheard that one. Sorry.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And so, sort of, what, which markets do you think are emerging? Kind of, which markets are you trying to sort of work with and kind of look at? And you mentioned sort of those ones, but are you looking at other places? Are you sort of looking at the whole area around Asia?
Yeah, I mean it's quite difficult at the moment because we can't travel. But I mean, I would say we've got quite a good gauge with working on Apple stores. So usually, if there's an Apple store in a country, that's a good chance. There's a good chance that that's a market that values us. So yeah, we've got this really handy um, tool
Mm.
to go by. I would say, you know, for us, there's plenty of developed markets and plenty of sort of quality work for us to get involved in. If you're looking at sort of emerging markets in Asia, I would name Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think what kind of skills do you think that you sort of had um, before you went out there that sort of has lent themselves to being able to do this? I mean, do you think
Hmm.
you've sort of learnt a lot while you've been out there in terms of developing your skills
Hmm.
and that kind of thing?
Hmm.
What would you say
Hmm.
to somebody sort of going out there now at the moment? I suppose that
Hmm.
comes into hot tips, but kind of,
Mm.
um, but sort of what would you say your skills are has allowed you to do this?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way we've done it is by me coming over to Hong Kong, and um, sort of like I'm a pioneer.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, those what you
Paving the
need
trail.
is, yeah. I mean, I think being self-sufficient is very important, because ultimately you have to. If you don't do something, it doesn't get done. You have to stay motivated. I think probably adaptable is probably the thing that I like before I came. Quite um, something I was quite proud of, and I think that's something that um, has been good with what I'm doing here.
How are you at walking into a room kind of where you don't know anybody? How's that one
I
going?
usually hate it. But there's. I mean, we've had this chat before. Um, for me, it's like you have to. There's a switch, and you have to
Yeah.
deliberately push it. And so, so yeah. How about for you, Kat?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of my friends would say I'm pretty extroverted,
Mm,
but I think actually, there is something to be said about the fact that,
mhm,
I used to do a lot of sort of going to conferences where I don't know anybody, and you've got to go and try
mhm,
and make some
mhm,
friends to kind of
mhm, mhm.
um, try and do all that kind of thing. And you do just have to stand at the doorway and just kind of go, come on, you can do this. Little pep talk. You
Yeah.
walk in, and you go up to somebody and you say hi, and generally they're just as nervous as you are, so it's fine. And it's kind of, and if they're not, well, great, you can just kind of launch from them. But there's always that little bit of intrepidation, isn't there? Kind of, just kind of walking in.
Of course.
So, yeah, definitely, absolutely. And so, kind of, in terms of the market in Hong Kong, yeah, so what's that like?
I mean, Hong Kong is. I mean, I think of it as a ecosystem that has. There's lots of factors, and it kind of has reached an equilibrium because of all those factors. I mean, one of those is about land, and like property is a huge market. Industry sector in Hong Kong is massive. Let me just give you a bit of perspective. Last year, 2019, which was the 2020 is the year of COVID. 2019 in Hong Kong was the year of the protests. So there's obviously uncertainty. A commercial plot was bought for $5 billion.
That's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible amounts of money. So property is massive in Hong Kong. It's very expensive, and usually when a client buys a piece of land, they want to put a building on it pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's. I mean, Hong Kong's a relatively small place, and there's the projects that are sort of coming up are kind of known. I mean, I would say that for I think understanding the mentality and priorities of clients is very important. I mean, there's a number of factors. I think the first one is that when we travel around the world, we do engineering design, but ultimately there's a sort of local permitting process. And Hong Kong is notorious for having a particularly stringent local permitting process, and it's the buildings department. So, like one of the first questions you always get from a client is, will it get through BD, the buildings department? Right? Because if it doesn't get through BD, then it doesn't happen. You don't get your permit. So, I mean, this is a massive priority, and for just give you a bit of background, it's structurally focused. We do a lot of facades in Hong Kong, and essentially a test of structural safety. We present the calculations and the drawings, because Hong Kong has typhoons, which for the engineers out there, could be up to 5 kPa, which is massive. So that's one priority. We'll get through BD. I think the second is that there's a mentality for going for tried and tested solutions, and I would say the majority of the market is about that. It's very much a risk averse approach. Maybe because it's the cost of the land has been so much, and you often hear from clients, I want something unique, but make sure it's been done before. So it's So they're like, okay. Very few clients want to be the guinea pig. So, but there are exceptions. There's some projects that where the client has decided to take a longer term view on the investment. I think Taikoo Place is a really good example. Giovanni's talk, I think it's 2 weeks ago.
That was incredible. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's the technical master for me.
Very technical.
Yeah, and he outlined how difficult it was to justify this innovative cable wall system to the buildings department, and it didn't get through first time. I don't think it got through second time. But had the backing of the client, because they wanted it to happen. So, so hopefully that gives you an idea of what the market is. So majority is quite risk averse, but there are exceptions.
Yeah, but I suppose it's sort of that's why we're here, in terms of sort of being able to, because I know that we've done loads of projects out there which you need to go for building approval, but they don't fit the codes. And so I suppose that's one of the real beauties of having a Hong Kong office, but one which works with the London office, and have that wider pool of people to be able to tap into, to be able to balance your work, to be able to sort of to be able to do that. And of course, obviously, they know all about the codes, and when things don't fit the code, how do you then sort of work out from first principles to be able to get through these kind of hoops in terms of the BD stuff. So that's kind of really,
I think we very much take a one company approach to how we've set up the Hong Kong office. I think that's been really, it was the right thing to do. So one of the things we want to offer is international expertise from wherever the expertise is. We can offer it locally. So that's kind of what we want to do. For us, we think there's the obvious question when you come into a new country is, where do you fit in, right? Who's there already? Who are your peers, competitors? Where is your place in that? I mean, we kind of position ourselves as an alternative, a high quality alternative, and a specialist. Most of our work is either facades, envelopes, where we're sort of integrating facade and structure together, or feature structures. So I think so obviously in our London office, we've done a lot of the structural glass work. Actually, my colleague here in Hong Kong, Anthony, is also supporting London with his expertise as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mustn't forget Anthony as well. Kind of in an office of two people, it's the other one is equally important. So absolutely mustn't forget him.
It's a really good question that's just popped up, which we'll answer later, I think.
Excellent. The in terms of sort of, and you mentioned lobby work as well, sort of not lobbying, but lobbies and things like that, and sort of the
I do a lot of that as well.
yeah, exactly. Lobbying to have the Egg McMuffin.
Should we explain that joke?
Yanchee was telling me before, apparently, that one of the great things about Hong Kong was the fact that you could get an Egg McMuffin sandwich the whole day rather than just before 10:30 in the morning. That was where that came from. Sorry, but yeah. So clearly the lobbying's worked, Yanchee. Sorry, but back to Portuguese.
Okay. The kinds of projects we're doing over here is usually projects with high design ambition. So usually a client signals that with who they employ as the design architect. So that's usually a good sign. Sometimes it's with an international architect. Maybe they might be based in UK or the US or in Europe. So they have to they have the same. They're also traveling essentially. Also projects with technical challenges as well. We do well with those. As I mentioned, envelopes or projects where we're integrating both structure and facade. So we're doing a really good one in Hong Kong at the moment. Got an NDA on that one, and also one in Macau, and that's another NDA as well. So seen another good question come up, and of course there's the structural glass. A lot of get a lot of interest about lobbies, and also the top of the buildings as well.
Oh, nice. Yes. Okay. Yes. That reminds me on that one, but I can't talk about it, so that's annoying. But yes. Okay. And so sort of, I think we're sort of coming up to time now, but should we round up with some of your, well, we'll take the questions obviously, but before we take the questions, should we go up with some of your hot tips?
Yeah. Let's do the hot tips.
Hot
So
tips.
I thought long and hard about these because you need some takeaways. So I think the hot tips are, I've split them into both company and on a personal level
Yeah.
as well. I think as on the company level, you need to really know what your company values are and what you can offer in
Yeah.
the market. I think secondly, you need to have a good understanding or be realistic about what projects are a good fit. There's some projects, opportunities that do come along, and if you're honest with yourself, it's probably not the right thing for you to do. Thirdly, and this relates to one of the questions, um, which is what mix of local recruitment versus staff from existing offices to maintain a one company approach. So the question about
Yeah.
the question how much to localize. So in Hong Kong, one of the big things is obviously the buildings department, and this has an impact on the whole design process, rightly or wrongly. Um, we we're recruiting locally, but with people who have experience of who've been in Hong Kong for a long time and know it inside out. I think we really need to. We think that's very important. So hopefully that answers that question. I think we're open to some comments at some point. So if anyone's up for it. But the important thing is that you don't compromise our offering as well. So I think that's my third point. Four, fast pace, be fit and agile. So you have to make sure that your teams, whether it be in Hong Kong or in London, are set up to they understand the needs, the expectations. Fifth, I put people first. Not only your team, but also the people you work with as well on projects or just know as well, because when you're starting out, um, it's all about people.
Yeah.
And on six, get buy-in from head office. It's a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
So I think we never knew the situation we're in now would be happening, but I think we're glad that we have with Hong Kong. I think.
Yeah, there's
Right.
there's sort of good
Mm,
buy-in from Brian and
mm,
James, isn't there, to make it a long-term sustainable office in terms of
and that's right.
its own rights.
Hmm.
But you are growing the office, aren't you, as well? It's kind of
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be free in the new year.
that's very exciting, Yanchee. Is that a local recruit? Is that somebody who's coming
Yeah,
over?
maybe a local recruit.
Local
Local
recruit.
recruit. Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
And so your personal hot tips.
First one, I've mentioned this before. You have to be motivated, resilient, and adaptable. I think adaptable is probably the most important one. Secondly, you're constantly learning. You have to be a sponge, and you have to absorb everything that is shared with you, because most of it's valuable.
Yeah.
I think thirdly, for me, I'm quite conscious that I've got a sort of heightened empathy, sort of professionally, culturally. You have to be very sensitive to spotting things that you might not think is what's happening. Like what I'll try to explain. Culturally, things might be slightly different, so you need to be you have to be aware of signs that's happening. Fourthly, I think actually I should put this number one. This is about communication. We're constantly communicating, not only with our clients here and our collaborators, but also with London when we're collaborating with them. So we're always we talk most evenings. I think Simon's question, working closely with London, time difference is obviously an advantage, and it is because you can. You might get the query during the day. You get a chance to mull over it, and then there is a time difference. Our 4 o'clock or currently 5 o'clock is London 9 a.m. So
Yeah,
you know,
the clock
there is
ticking,
this
you cannot
window. There is
compress it.
this window. Yeah. So you know, you have that conversation with them, and then yeah, you know, if it's a short task, then hopefully, you know, they'll have the answer in the morning. So it's kind of 24-hour working somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and you always have to give them context because they're, you know, if the project's in Asia, they're so far away from it. Sometimes they lose touch or context of what it is. So you have to try and help them understand what the context is of that project. You know, so things that are outside the realms of the design, the engineering, the construction.
yeah.
You know, what will this building be? Where is it? What does it mean in the context
For the
of
local people, exactly.
exactly. So, and my final one is uh, on a personal level. You know, coming here with the pioneer model, you have to find a local support network because it's not easy starting out. And I what I really like about Hong Kong is that whilst there's 7.5 million people here, it very much has a village feel, certainly in the industry, I think, and you always bump into people. You know, a lot of people are being very, very generous with their time and with their advice. So yeah, and that's really helped. Certainly when I was on my own, you know, but now
Yeah.
now we've got a growing team, so yeah, kind of glad we're sort of past the hurdle. I was doing this on my own.
No, I know. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, people are the kind of the key to everything, aren't
mm,
they? When
definitely.
I was working abroad
Mm,
a few years ago, and actually my experience of working abroad was kind of hugely shaped by the people that I met. And I think that
mhm,
had I not met certain people, it would have been um, an incredibly different experience. And you know, and
mhm,
I'm so lucky the fact that I look so fondly back on that time.
mhm, mhm,
Um, because of the people that I met and formed that
mhm,
exact
mhm,
support bubble. You know, it's kind
mhm.
of well, who knew the word support bubble existed before 2020? But you know what I mean, that support network.
Exactly, exactly.
So yeah, I think that's a really good one. So we've probably got time for a few. Those are your top tips, aren't they?
That's it. Those are my
Great.
top
I
tips.
mean, that's a great one to kind of finish for your top tips on, because it is all about people. But there are some questions which have just popped up.
Hmm.
So in terms of so Umma says in terms of business development, are there any differences in approach to Hong Kong and to UK, considering cultural aspects? I mean,
Hmm.
that's a really good question in terms of, you know,
It is. It
why
is. Not
things
sure I
are
know.
always that different to how you do it in the UK.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure I know, you know, the answer. I think in Hong Kong, we mentioned this before. I think there's more of a reliance on the face to face.
Mm,
You know, you have to, you know, with a client, it will take quite a few meetings with them to you might be given the same messages. You might think, oh, I should tell them something else this time, but actually, if you, I think it's reinforcing. Um, so I think probably you have to spend more face-to-face time
mm.
in
Do you go to
Asia.
sort of conferences out there and things like that? Is there kind of a scene for meeting people in that way? Um,
Yeah, there is. There is. Yeah, there's a MIPIM Asia.
mm,
Um, there's various conferences. Yeah, Hong Kong's actually quite got a big conference
I imagine actually.
industry before uh, the last couple of years. So
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine so.
mhm.
And one last one, I think. If anybody else wants to ask a question, then feel free. Um, before we let Yanchee go to bed, poor thing. Um, and now, this one's a slightly offbeat topic. Why
Mm.
did we choose Paris as opposed to any other European office outside London? Do you have any views on Brexit might impact your London and Paris offices?
I don't
That's
know.
sort of it's a little bit offbeat for kind of what we might be able to answer right now. We can send you an answer. We can send you an email on that one, but I'm not sure that we're sort of in a great position um, to answer that one at the moment in terms of the Hong Kong. kind of stuff. Would you see kind of opening another office kind of in Asia anywhere? I mean, kind of what's in the future?
That's a good question. I think we've seen what other companies have done. They would either go for either Singapore for Southeast Asia,
Yep.
and in China, the next one, the other obvious alternative is China, either Shanghai, and we've seen a lot of companies open offices in Shenzhen, which is just over the border into mainland China. So I think we're seeing companies enter China straight into Shenzhen. Shenzhen's another big market as well. It's the Silicon Valley of China. Yeah.
Wow.
Your phone's probably made there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's an exciting prospect, isn't it, in terms of the future? Okay, well, in which case then, I think there aren't any more questions from people outside, but I just want to say thank you very much indeed for joining us, especially if you have stayed up late, if you're in Hong Kong. And thank you very much to everybody else. And if you're in America, then, you know, happy day, because I know it'll be kind of morning time for you. And so if I can make a slight plug for our next webinar. So our next webinar is next week, and it's balanced transparency. And that's sort of performance demands for net zero. Obviously, sustainability is a massive issue that we take very seriously and that we're building on. And so Camilla and Alessandro, with some guest speakers, which will be very exciting. Some guest speakers are joining us. So they'll be giving that presentation next week.
I just want to say thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Kat. I think you've been doing a really good job on these webinars, and I've made you work a little bit harder for this one. So
yeah, normally I can just come and say
thank
hello
you.
and go.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of breathe a sigh of relief this time round. Anyway, thank you. I didn't take that. That's great. Anyway, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. I'll let you go and sleep, Yanchee. I hope you get a good night's sleep. And
thanks a lot.
See you tomorrow. Super.
Okay, see you later. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, cheers.
Take care. Bye.